In a striking turn of events, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed that he finds it more difficult to negotiate with Ukraine than with Russia, asserting that Vladimir Putin may be easier to deal with despite the ongoing conflict. During a recent address, Trump indicated that his administration is contemplating significant sanctions and tariffs against Russia following a massive missile and drone assault on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, which has escalated tensions in the region. This commentary comes amidst a backdrop of intensified military action, with Ukraine reporting that Russian forces launched over 200 missiles and drones aimed at critical infrastructure, leading to widespread destruction. Trump's remarks reflect a complex geopolitical landscape where the U.S. is re-evaluating its stance on the war in Ukraine. Based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I am strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached, Trump stated on Truth Social. This statement points to a dual approach of exerting economic pressure on Russia while simultaneously navigating the challenging relationship with Ukraine, which he described as difficult. The severity of the recent Russian attacks cannot be understated. Ukraine's Air Force confirmed the successful interception of 34 missiles and 100 drones, but the scale of the assault has left the country reeling. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called for an immediate truce, emphasizing the need for silence in the skies to facilitate peace discussions. Zelenskyy's plea follows a particularly brutal wave of violence that has seen civilian areas targeted and critical energy infrastructure damaged. As the fighting intensifies, the situation for Ukrainian forces remains precarious. Reports indicate that tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops who had initially advanced into Russian territory are now at risk of encirclement as Russian forces regroup and counterattack. Military analysts warn that without a strategic withdrawal or reinforcement, Ukrainian troops could face dire consequences. While Trump's comments have sparked debate, they have also drawn sharp criticism. The Liberal Democrats in the UK condemned his flip-flopping approach to Ukraine, warning that his inconsistent messaging undermines the reliability of the US as a partner in the region. Helen Maguire, a spokesperson for the party, remarked, "This is yet more proof of Trump's flip-flopping approach to Ukraine's defense and security, emphasizing the need for a stable and clear US policy." Amidst these developments, diplomatic efforts continue. Ukrainian officials reported intensive communication with U.S. counterparts, focusing on the urgency of reaching a peace agreement. Talks are set to take place in Saudi Arabia, where both sides hope to find common ground for a ceasefire. The Kremlin has suggested that a draft peace deal from 2022 could serve as a foundation for renewed negotiations, but both sides appear to have diverging visions for any potential settlement. As the conflict drags on into its fourth year, the prospect of a sustained military campaign looms large. Experts predict that unless significant political changes occur, the fighting may continue, fueled by the complexities of international alliances and military support. The potential for a prolonged stalemate raises concerns about the broader ramifications for European security and stability. In conclusion, the ongoing war in Ukraine underscores the intricate balance of diplomacy, military strategy, and international relations. As Trump navigates his presidency with shifting policies, the global community watches closely, anticipating who will emerge as a reliable partner in the pursuit of peace. With the stakes higher than ever, the coming weeks will be critical in shaping the future of Ukraine and its relations with both Russia and the United States. In a dramatic escalation of tensions within the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed a paradoxical view that negotiating with Russia might be easier than dealing with Ukraine. His comments come amidst a backdrop of intensified Russian attacks, which have seen over 200 missiles and drones launched at Ukrainian infrastructure in recent days. As the war continues into its third year, the complexities of international diplomacy and military strategy are becoming increasingly pronounced. During a recent statement, Trump indicated his belief that achieving peace may hinge on negotiations with Russia, despite acknowledging that Moscow currently holds significant leverage. It may be easier to deal with Russia, which is odd as they have all the cards, he remarked, underscoring a shift in his rhetoric towards the Kremlin. In an apparent contradiction, Trump has also threatened to impose widespread sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a peace deal is reached. He emphasized on Truth Social, based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I am strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. The latest Russian offensive has seen a substantial attack on Ukrainian energy targets, with the Ukrainian Air Force reporting that they intercepted 34 rockets and 100 drones among the barrage. The situation has provoked a stern response from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who reiterated calls for a truce, stating that silence in the skies and a ban on missile use are critical first steps towards achieving lasting peace. Ukraine is ready to pursue the path to peace, and it is Ukraine that strives for peace from the very first second of this war, he declared. The implications of Trump's statements and the current military dynamics are significant. Analysts have noted that as Trump's administration grapples with its foreign policy approach, the inconsistency in messaging could undermine U.S. credibility as a reliable partner for Ukraine. Liberal Democrat defense spokesperson Helen McGuire criticized Trump's flip-flopping approach, stating, "This is yet more proof of Trump's flip-flopping approach to Ukraine's defense and security." Meanwhile, the Kremlin has dismissed any notion of compromise, with President Vladimir Putin and other officials rejecting concessions during potential peace negotiations. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that any proposal involving European peacekeeping forces would be considered a NATO deployment, which Russia would vehemently oppose. Lavrov's remarks reinforce a long-standing narrative from the Kremlin that positions the West as an adversary, further complicating the path to peace. As the conflict continues to unfold, the dynamics on the battlefield are equally troubling for Ukraine. Reports indicate that Ukrainian forces are facing encirclement in the Kursk region as Russian troops execute a counteroffensive, prompting urgent discussions on supply lines and potential retreat strategies. Military analyst Pasi Poroinen warned if Ukrainian forces are not able to restore the situation quickly, this could be the moment where the Kursk salient begins to finally close into an encircled pocket. In a related development, Ukraine has begun receiving the first tranche of funds from the UK amounting to $1 billion sourced from frozen Russian assets. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal confirmed that these funds will bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities at a critical juncture in the conflict. Looking ahead, diplomatic efforts are intensifying, with US and Ukrainian officials scheduled to meet in Saudi Arabia next week to explore potential frameworks for a peace agreement. As the situation evolves, the interplay between military strategy and diplomatic negotiations will be crucial in shaping the future of not only Ukraine but also the broader geopolitical landscape in Europe. The urgency for a resolution grows as both sides prepare for what could be a pivotal moment in this protracted conflict. In a dramatic turn of events, President Donald Trump has recently made headlines with his comments regarding the ongoing war in Ukraine and the United States' relationship with Russia. During a day marked by significant diplomatic activity, Trump conveyed that Russian President Vladimir Putin seeks a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. This assertion, however, comes amidst a backdrop of escalating tensions and criticism of the U.S. administration's handling of the situation. On March 7, 2025, Trump addressed the nation, warning Russia of potential large-scale sanctions and tariffs in response to its military actions in Ukraine. However, in a striking contradiction, he also adopted a more lenient stance during an in-person appearance, suggesting that Russia's recent aerial bombardments of Ukrainian infrastructure were a predictable move. "Anybody in that position would be doing that right now," Trump stated, indicating a willingness to understand Putin's motivations. This approach has drawn considerable criticism, with opponents arguing that Trump's rhetoric undermines Ukraine's position and emboldens Russian aggression. The U.S. government's recent decisions have further complicated the situation. Critics have pointed out that the cessation of intelligence sharing with Ukraine has severely limited its defense capabilities against Russian attacks, which have already resulted in civilian injuries. Additionally, the temporary suspension of Ukraine's access to U.S.-purchased commercial satellite imagery has left the country vulnerable at a critical juncture in the conflict. In a move that has raised eyebrows, Trump has suggested that negotiating with Russia may be more straightforward than dealing with Ukraine. During a White House cryptocurrency summit, he remarked that Ukraine has been more difficult to work with than Russia, a comment that has been met with backlash from various quarters, including military experts and foreign policy analysts. Efforts to mediate a ceasefire have been underway, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio engaging in discussions with French officials about a potential resolution to the hostilities. In a statement, the State Department emphasized Trump's commitment to achieving a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, though many remain skeptical about the administration's willingness to hold Russia accountable for its actions. The implications of Trump's approach extend beyond Ukraine, influencing U.S. relations with allies and adversaries alike. For instance, Canada has announced a multi-billion-dollar relief package aimed at supporting businesses affected by Trump's tariffs, which recently included a 25% levy on Canadian goods. Canadian Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon underscored the urgency of these measures, stating, "We are moving ahead with these changes. Businesses and workers need assurances right now." In a broader context, the White House's recent activities reflect a tumultuous period marked by internal strife within the administration. Reports have surfaced of clashes between Trump's cabinet members and his advisor Elon Musk, raising concerns about the efficiency of governance and the direction of U.S. policy. Musk's involvement in government has sparked tensions, particularly regarding layoffs and budget cuts aimed at streamlining federal operations. As the situation unfolds, the future of U.S.-Russia relations and the conflict in Ukraine remains uncertain. With Trump positioning himself as a potential peacemaker, the effectiveness of his approach and the response from both Moscow and Kiev will be crucial in determining the course of events. Observers are left wondering whether this diplomatic maneuvering will lead to a genuine resolution or merely serve as a temporary facade amid deeper geopolitical tensions. As the world watches closely, the coming weeks will likely reveal whether Trump's strategy will yield peace or exacerbate the ongoing conflict. Tensions between the United States and Ukraine have intensified in recent days, marked by a notable spike in disinformation campaigns following a contentious meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and U.S. President Donald Trump. This clash, which occurred in the Oval Office on February 28, 2025, has not only stirred political discourse but also catalyzed a significant increase in anti-Ukrainian narratives online, leading to a flood of misinformation targeting Zelenskyy. In the aftermath of Trump's public criticism of Zelenskyy, allegations surfaced that he had insulted Trump, staged war scenes for propaganda, and misappropriated U.S. aid. According to Madeline Roach, managing editor at the misinformation watchdog NewsGuard, there has been a staggering rise in false claims about Ukraine on U.S. social media, particularly after Trump accused Zelenskyy of being ungrateful for American military support. We've seen an avalanche of different disinformation campaigns trying to portray President Zelenskyy as a bad leader, Roach stated, noting that such narratives often echo pro-Russian propaganda depicting Ukraine as corrupt and the war as a sham. Data from NewsGuard reveals a dramatic surge in social media activity surrounding Zelenskyy, with mentions of his name alongside terms like villa and yacht skyrocketing by over 2,500% in just a week. This disinformation is not only damaging to Zelenskyy's reputation but also complicates diplomatic efforts at a time when Ukraine is seeking international support amidst ongoing hostilities with Russia. Fact-checking efforts have debunked several viral claims circulating online. For instance, a misleading video purportedly showing Zelenskyy swearing at Trump was proven false, as a comparison with the original footage revealed he made no such remarks. Similarly, claims that Zelenskyy demanded U.S. troops be sent to fight in Ukraine were taken out of context from a speech warning about the implications of a Russian victory. Furthermore, allegations that USAID funds a Ukrainian information warfare center to create pro-Ukrainian bots were shown to be fabricated, with official reports confirming that significant US aid is primarily directed towards humanitarian efforts. Amidst this backdrop of disinformation, Zelenskyy is scheduled to visit South Africa on April 10, 2025 for discussions with President Cyril Ramaphosa aimed at exploring pathways to peace in the ongoing conflict with Russia. Ramaphosa has positioned South Africa as a neutral mediator, advocating for the inclusion of Ukraine in any peace negotiations, a sentiment echoed by European leaders. This visit comes at a critical juncture following Trump's recent suspension of military aid to Ukraine, which he linked to Zelenskyy's perceived lack of commitment to peace. As the conflict continues, Zelenskyy remains resolute in his call for peace, emphasizing that Ukraine has sought an end to hostilities since the onset of the war. The task is to force Russia to stop the war, he stated, advocating for a truce and a cessation of attacks on civilian infrastructure. However, as demonstrated by the recent missile strikes on Ukrainian energy facilities, the path to peace is fraught with challenges. Looking ahead, the dynamics of US-Ukraine relations and the broader geopolitical landscape will undoubtedly evolve as Zelenskyy engages in international diplomacy and seeks to counteract the disinformation campaigns undermining his leadership. As the world watches, the outcome of these developments will have significant implications not only for Ukraine but for the future of international relations in the region.